Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw Minions: The Rise of Gru completely annihilating Lightyear. It was quite insane to see these opening weekend numbers because not only does Minions have a much better opening weekend than Lightyear had by a crap ton of money, but the domestic number for Minions is already past where Lightyear currently is. Lightyear has now been out for 3 weeks. Minions has just been released. And so I think that this is a huge sign to Disney, especially more so than any others, that, hey, guess what? When you try to push identity politics into your films, when you try to shove messaging down everyone's throats, when you try to put crap content on your Disney Plus service that tries to go after kids in a very weird way, guess what? People are going to use their wallets and going to say, yeah, you know what, screw you, stop trying to brainwash our kids, and how about instead you get back to what you used to be really good at, especially with properties like the Toy Story franchise of all things. But I digress. Before we get any further, though, into these numbers, also some updates on where Top Gun Maverick is and also Jurassic World. Please make sure that you smash that like button, slap that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel. So, as you can see from this headline from Deadline, from good old Nancy over there, it says right here, Minions: The Rise of Gru boogies to $202 million worldwide opening. Remember that Lightyear opened to a dismal $51 million. That is, I think, a pretty, it's a pretty clear sign there. 51 million more specifically in the domestic market. But this film, Minions, has already, even internationally, in one weekend, and we don't even have the numbers for tomorrow, which, hey, happy 4th of July, everybody. Blessed 4th weekend to all those members who of course passed away fighting for our independence, and all those who currently serve in the armed forces as well. Thank you for your service. But this, I think, is a very interesting number nonetheless, because even without those numbers, Minions clearly the victor between those two movies. Someone in the comment section at one point tried to say, well, yeah, Minions has always been a huge hit, a huge success, but one could say the same thing also about the Toy Story franchise as well. Also, the fact that Minions is actually a spin-off of the main Despicable Me franchise and has still been able to remain consistent in its numbers and do well and perform well at the box office. I think that also kind of doubles down on why it is that, and kind of gives away, or rather takes away, any of the excuses that many people in Hollywood, especially in the mainstream media, are trying to use to explain how in the world did Lightyear not do well, right? They'll try to blame pretty much all things except for the identity politics they shoved into their movie, but then also, of course, the marketing behind it and the recent, finding out, as it were, of that new series Baymax, amongst other content that they're putting onto their streaming service Disney Plus, which is clearly pushing some weird stuff that should be between kids and their parents, or parents and their kids more specifically, and not between Disney, a giant corporation that has motives, and children in general. So, Minions doing very well here. Not going to be out of the woods, though, because there was, at least according to IMDb, a release date for this film to be put out into China. This would be very consistent with Universal Studios, especially doing a lot of work with China pretty much throughout the entire pandemic, even up until now. And so think about just the hundreds of millions of dollars that Universal has given to the CCP. Gonna call them out for that. But at least from where I stand, it seems that Disney is a much more evil corporation when kids are involved, especially. Not to say that China's out of it, because CCP's also done some really terrible, awful things. But guess what? Two things can be true at the same time. Top Gun Maverick, on the other hand, is also doing very well, flying to $1.1 billion, continuing to add insane amounts of money, still after 6 weeks in the domestic market, only having a very small 14% drop. Insane numbers going on for this film. So glad to see it happen. This is what happens when Hollywood decides to take a movie, to take a concept, and say, hey, we're just going to make it fun, we're going to do some really cool things, and hey, people are actually going to go and watch it and go and see it, not looking at you, Disney's Lightyear. Jurassic World Dominion, even though it is a terrible movie, is still a movie nonetheless, making a lot of money, more so in the international market than in the domestic market, but it has now crossed the $800 million mark internationally. And as I said, it's not doing very well domestically, to be honest. It's only around $300 million or so in that department. So the vast majority of its money is coming in, was predicted to be coming from the international market, which would also include over $100 million in China, and over $100 million has already gone to the CCP. So as it says here, it's talking about Rise of Gru at Deadline. The latest entry in the Globe's biggest animated franchise had previously bowed in Australia last weekend, and this frame added another 60 markets. In the fresh hubs, the debut was 81.5. In like for likes for today's exchange rates, the new openers are 23% below Minions and 13% below Despicable Me 3, including Australia. Results in week 2 are tracking 13% below Minions and just 3% below. So as you can see, Minions Rise of Gru is actually not doing any better than the other films that are in this franchise. And so I think this is also a pretty clear sign that even though it is tracking underneath it, it's not tracking incredibly underneath that. It's not tracking by a large amount underneath it, like what you saw with Lightyear versus the Toy Story franchise, but also you're seeing the film continue to actually make money, and Universal being very smart with their money in not spending a crazy ton and crazy amount of money on their project. It's still insane to me where you look at two films, Minions versus Lightyear, or Minions versus Toy Story, or almost any Disney animated film, and what do you constantly see? Disney spending $200+ million on all of their films, live action and animated, maybe 100 to 150 at minimum for some of their smaller projects, but typically $200 million or so. Lightyear cost $200 million. And then you look at Rise of Gru, and according to at least the Wikipedia article, it says that the budget is said to be roughly around $85 million. So not only is this film doing better than Lightyear, not only did they spend less on marketing than on Lightyear, they also were able to make their money back in just one weekend. You heard that right. This film has already become profitable after one weekend. Again, one big part of that is how much they spend on it. So Disney, clearly you're going to try and use the Disney Plus flex saying, oh yeah, we're making hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion a month from all of the subscribers we have on Disney Plus. However, your shareholders are going to look at these numbers and say, yeah, but where exactly is this money coming from, and where is it actually going, and why are we wasting hundreds of millions, and wait a minute, why is our stock price now below $100, etc., etc.? Yeah. Let's just be honest here. Stockholders, you need to start to call out Disney for their nonsense, and you need to start to actually hold them accountable. You're the only ones that can, because it's clear, based on Bob Chapek getting renewed amongst so many other decisions that they've made, they're not going to do it themselves. They need the people who own, whether it be influence on the board or just biggest stockholders in general. They need someone to come in there and wreck house. Looking at the actual numbers themselves for the domestic market, Minions, clearly the number one film of the domestic market, $108.5 million in its opening, which just by itself puts it ahead of where Lightyear is at the same time. Lightyear right now is at 105.3. So in one weekend, Minions has made what it's taken 3 weekends, and actually hasn't even gotten up to that point yet for Lightyear, but taken almost 3 weekends for Lightyear to get to. That is an abysmal sign. And again, yes, Despicable Me and the Minions franchises have been successful, but so has the Toy Story franchise. And so, again, saying that, well, you're just talking about a successful franchise, is not a good excuse for how poorly Lightyear is actually doing. The Black Phone coming in above Lightyear with $12.3 million in its second week of release. So at 48% hold for that movie. Very, very strong numbers there for a smaller film. The film has already made its money back, so congrats on The Black Phone. Another Universal project, actually, for making its money back. Looks like Universal is going to be kind of, creeping ahead a little bit. That and Paramount seem to be the studios that are making money this year, whereas studios like Warner Brothers and Disney seem to not be. And it's interesting that both of those studios spend a lot of money, way too much money, in fact, on a lot of their projects, whereas places like Paramount and places like Universal, they sometimes spend a lot, but they tend to keep things a little bit better in check. They seem to be better with money in various ways, at least when it comes to their movies. Jurassic World Dominion, though, another Universal project, $15.6 million, a 41% drop from its previous week. Even after 4 weeks, the film is still making money, $331.8 million domestically, but it's made its money back easily at this point. It continues just to make mass amounts of profits in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Elvis, as I mentioned, second week of release, $19 million, a 39% hold, bringing this film up to 67.3. So this would be impressive. This would be a good sign, except Elvis cost a lot more than it should have. It cost around $85 million. And so even though the film is actually doing well as far as the box office is concerned and having strong holds, it may end up still losing money. Now, there is a scenario out there where it makes its money back and makes some profit, but there is also a scenario out there where the film is not quite able to do so, and a big part of that is because of how much they spent on it. Again, Warner Brothers, what are you doing spending all the money that you do on these projects? Top Gun Maverick, though, 25.5 coming at the number 2 spot, a 14% hold, up to $564 million domestically, well on its way to hitting $600+ million domestically. So kudos to Tom Cruise, to Paramount, to Skydance, to everyone involved in the making of Top Gun Maverick, all of the actors, all of the stunt persons, every single person attached to it, because it's a fun movie, and I'm so happy to see. It's always great to see good action films, good big budget films do well. Because oftentimes it's almost as if it's a guarantee that if you spend a lot of money, you make your money back. And I'm happy to see that that is not necessarily going to be the case going forward, because Lightyear losing crap tons of money, whereas Top Gun Maverick making a lot of money back. Looking at the international box office, $221.6 million in total for Minions: The Rise of Gru. As I said, already passing where Lightyear currently is. Lightyear right now is at 189.1. So in one weekend, and this hasn't even gotten its July 4th day yet, this film doing very, very well. Looking at some comparisons for a second, Minions: Rise of Gru had a better first Friday than Lightyear, Despicable Me, Toy Story 4, Despicable Me 3, and Toy Story 3. Every single one of them, it actually had a better opening, so that's Thursday and Friday numbers there, than those movies, and these are all adjusted for inflation. Now, Toy Story 3 definitely picked things back up on its first Saturday and its first Sunday, and is definitely ahead of that. But it is interesting that you look at Minions: The Rise of Gru, and where was this in the same time of its release compared to some newer films in the same category? You look at Toy Story 4, was at 135. You look at Despicable Me 3 was at 88, so it's doing better than Despicable Me 3 at that point. Toy Story 3, which was a massive film that made $1.2 billion, was at 146 at this time. So Minions is right up there, whereas you look at a film like Lightyear, and Lightyear's even below the first Despicable Me's opening weekend. You look at Despicable Me 3, it's below that too. So I don't think it does enough to really stress how poorly Disney's Lightyear is honestly doing. And anyone who's going to try and spin it in any other way other than just the facts of what we know about the movie and what has been talked about as far as Disney is concerned, I think is trying to play cover for Disney. And you might have to start asking questions of, why are you being so defensive of Disney all the time? Top Gun Maverick at $1.1 billion. That's right. Keep on doing your thing, Top Gun Maverick. Awesome stuff. Elvis, $113.5 million. As I mentioned, it's doing well, but that budget is holding it back. Jurassic World Dominion at $828. Is this film have a chance? Does it have a chance of making $1 billion? Maybe, but it's going to be coming from the international, not from the domestic. And remember, you have films like Thor: Love and Thunder set to come out very soon, amongst other movies. And so a lot more competition for this film, I think, is going to saturate the market to keep this film slowing down enough for it to maybe get to that $900+ million mark, maybe even getting as high as Doctor Strange 2, which ended up being around $950 million. But I don't know necessarily if $1 billion's in the cards. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? I would honestly say probably not. Just remember, though, that Universal has given over $100 million to China because studios only get about 25% of the amount of money made in China, which leaves about $100 million to the CCP. So screw Universal for that. But hey, kudos to you for beating out a Disney film. The Black Phone, $76.7 million, doing very well for a much lower budget film, around $10 million budget film. So this film's already about $20 million or so in the black. Whereas Lightyear, because of its massive $200+ million budget, remembering that it's Disney only gets about 60% of the entire box office when everything's said and done. And then you have to, of course, subtract marketing costs, etc. Yeah, looking at almost $150 million loss for this movie. So we can honestly say at this point pretty clearly, and I don't see this changing anytime soon, #Lightyear lost money. Let's go ahead and look at some charts because we like charts here. We'll go over to OMBReviews.com, my website, where we do the box office tracking. So as you can see, Minions: Rise of Gru has the film already at $5.4 million in net gain profit, whereas Black Phone, 76.7, has it at $20.5 million in net gain profits. You have Elvis, because of its massive budget, still $59 million in the red. Is there a chance for it to make its money back? Sure, but it's going to have a little bit of a trek to get there. Whereas with Lightyear's $189.1 million worldwide is $186.5 in the red, and there's no way for this film, because there's no markets indicating any interest in it, there's no way that this film is going to be able to make that kind of money back. Do not be surprised to see this early on Disney+. It would personally be my own guess. Jurassic World Dominion, $828 million. Even though $1 billion might be out of the cards, it's still close to $250 million in net gain profits, might get close to $300 million in net gain profits by the end of its run. But no film is really doing as well, though, as Top Gun Maverick, which even though it's been out for 6 weeks, so it's been out for a while now, it keeps on making money. It's making more money than a lot of films' first weekends, and so there really is no exact endpoint for this film. You could see this movie get to $1.2 billion by the end of the next weekend. So who knows, 1.2, 1.3, where the actual ceiling for this film is. The fact is, it's already doubled what it made in the first 2 weeks of its release. That's what that 50% number means there. What it means is that based on my metrics, which usually predict films to end up somewhere between 50 and 70% compared to their first 2 weeks, in this case, this would mean the lower the number, the better it's doing, that it's already doubled the amount of money. And so this number is going to end up in the probably low 40s, maybe even upper 30s. So it could end up being one of the best performing films, or one of the better performing films at the very least, of not just this year, but even of the last several years. So $410 million in net gain profits for Paramount. Kudos to them for being able to pull that off. We'll go ahead and lastly look at what the projections are for some of these films. So that 76.7 for Black Phone means it's going to make somewhere between 109 and 153 by the end of its run. Elvis is going to make somewhere between 162 and 227. And of course, we already talked about Lightyear previously. These are the only two films that had their second weekend numbers. But remember, the biggest reason why Elvis is not in great shape is not because of how poorly it's doing, because it's actually doing quite well at the box office, all things considered. It's because of this number right here, that $85 million budget. Black Phone cost $17 million, and to be honest, Elvis should have cost somewhere between these two numbers instead, probably even closer to this. $25 to $40 million to me would have made more sense for how much they actually spent on that film. Because while Black Phone, because of its lower budget, is already seeing, as far as projections go, to either make $40 to $66 million in net gain profits, Elvis could end up losing $30 million if it drops off a cliff, or make around $8 million if it does better than expected, meaning if it doubles the amount of money it's made so far, which is possible. Top Gun Maverick was able to do it, for instance. It could make its money back, it could make some profit, but the average of these two, again, for me, the more likely scenario, $10.7 million in losses, wouldn't be surprised all that much by it, at least because of the actual budget for the film. But those are the numbers as they currently stand. So what are y'all's thoughts? Are you surprised that Minions is doing as well as it is? I'm personally quite surprised myself. Again, it comes from a very successful franchise, but, I was starting to listen to all the Deadline and all the, show reporters talking about how, families, they're just going to wait for it to come out on streaming and they don't want to take their kids out. Well, clearly that's not the case. Minions is kind of destroying that narrative. And so what's left with Lightyear? What actually makes sense with it? I know there's a misspelling in my chart there. I just noticed with Lightyear itself. But you know what? It deserves it. It deserves to be misspelled. Could it be that, Tim Allen not being in the film and replacing it instead with a major leftist and Chris Evans is a part of the equation of it not doing well? I would say so. What about Disney itself just being a garbage organization, doing a lot of really sketchy stuff recently with things like Baymax and going after the floor bill for, fake stuff, fake news? Yeah, could be that too. And could also just be, the fact that they also put some of that identity politics stuff into their actual film Lightyear itself. Maybe. Also the fact that they kind of boasted about it and very publicly talked about it too. All these things could be a part of it. Maybe. Shill Media, you gonna start to wake up for this? We'll have to wait and see. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button on Odyssey. Y'all all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to my June Keeper of the Bifrost and Chosen of Valhalla level members, Brandon, let's go Brandon, Christopher Bowman, Garrett Searles, Hymir Irie Hymason, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Father Luca, Mike Jackson, for the win, Mad Mitch Dunaway, or in Chat Reviews. Make sure to check out his YouTube channel. He just hit 1,000 subscribers. Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel as well. Stan Andrian, Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel. And also, of course, the amazing Tina B, Empress of the Universe. Check out her YouTube channel, especially her show, Soup to Nuts, that she does with the amazing Stephanie B. Thank y'all very much for supporting me over on Patreon. And a huge shout out to all of my subscribers as well over on Subscribestar at these levels. Matt 317, Storm Tracker, the R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, and also, of course, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. You guys are amazing. And a last shout out to my locals members. We have Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan. How about a hockey player? We have Mike Jackson for the win once again, Robert Barnes, and Brett D90. So I want to say thank you again for being my members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and the Chosen of Valhalla levels. If you want your name specially shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream, please check out my links, add to the Patreon and Subscribe Star. You can find those in the top link in the video description, the Willow link, as I like to call it, where you can also get access to things like giveaways, things like the podcast I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, and other cool stuff like that. Anyway, thank you all very much for supporting me for the month of June. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.